So in this challenge called Trust Me from the HuntressCTF 2025, it's a miscellaneous challenge and it says, come on bro, trust me, just trust me bro. The trustme.exe program on this Windows desktop doesn't trust me. It says it will give me the flag, but only if I have permissions of the trusted installer. If you're using the VPN, you can RDP into this challenge by doing administrator with the password, and the virtual machine does not have internet access. But in this video, I'm going to show you how to bypass that, where we don't even need internet access to go about exploiting this specific vulnerability. But in the challenge in and of itself, it does say something about trusted installer. Now, trusted installer is essentially a user or service, quote unquote, within the Windows system that has excessive amount of permissions. It's basically an administrator, but with even more permissions than that. So going over to RDP, we can see what we have on this box, and it says trustme.exe is on the desktop. When we click it, it says, I don't trust you. I'll give you the flag, but only if you have the trusted installer permissions. So we need to be trusted installer. And the way that we can go about doing that is we can simply look up what the trusted installer even is and how to go about exploiting it. So heading over to your browser, just type in trusted installer, and we could type in something like exploit. We could see if anything shows up, and we could see here the creator, John Hammond, as you can see here, ended up doing a video about this specific vulnerability. So looking at the run as trusted installer binary, we could see what exactly is going on. So looking at it, it basically says that this code shows how you can use an undocumented API NT impersonate thread to how your thread impersonates trusted installer, which allows full access to duplicated security token and start a process. Think of it almost like GotPotato. If you ever use GotPotato, it does something very similar where you can abuse the impersonate privilege on the Windows system. And by doing that, you will be running as NT authority system user. And a big advantage of doing it this way is that we don't have to be running as service like the methods used to do, as far as privilege escalation is concerned. So we could try to do this attack path. So we'll head on over here and we will just copy the executable, a wget again into here. And here we now have that specific binary. So we can go and try to do this. So again, we're going to quickly do an x3rdp onto the box and quickly connect back. And we see here that again, we just don't have privileges, but we don't have access to this specific binary, right? We don't have access to it. We can't access anything, can't execute it, can't do anything like that. So we need to find a way to get the file to be on this specific box. Now, due to connectivity issues, I may not be able to do this challenge. It really depends because they have lowered the resources, unfortunately, of this specific challenge for the HuntressCTF. This is after the CTF has ended, so I do have to see if this will work or not. All right, so I do have a connection right now, and I hope it lasts throughout this quick video. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something called Impacket SMB share. And essentially what this is going to do is this is going to create a share folder on this machine specifically. So if we go over to IPA, we can see exactly what our tunnel is. And it looks like we are 10.200.225. So copying this on over, we could do a neat little trick inside of Windows where if you go to the File Explorer and you do a double backslash and then you paste in your IP address and you click enter, we can see here that we do have that share folder that I was mentioning before. And then inside of it, if it does load, let's see if it does or doesn't. So let's try it again. And we can see here that we do have that run as TI now. So clicking on it, we can try to run the binary and click on run, and it's going to take a minute to load. And once it does, we see here that we do have a pop-up where we need to run this specific program as trusted installer. So by doing so, we can quickly click on these three dots, head on over to our desktop, click on trust me, and then click run as trusted installer. Now this may take a second, but once it does work, we do retrieve the flag. So this next challenge is called phasing through printers, and it says, I found this printer on the network and it seems to be running a weird web page to search for drivers. Here's some of the code I could dig up. And it says here to escalate your privileges and uncover the flag in the root user's home directory with the password of the zip file. And every time we see a zip file, when it comes to a web application, the first thing we want to do is check out the source code. So here I already have VS Code running, and we can quickly take a look at what we have. So first things first is the index.html is simply doing a GET request to search.cgi, and we are getting a Q parameter inside of the search.c directory. We could see what exactly is going on, and it says here that we are retrieving that Q parameter like it was mentioned before within the front end, and then it's going to quickly URL decode it. And here we see that it is doing a grep command for this specific file, var html data printer underscore drivers.txt. It's concatenating everything, including the decoded URL, which is something very important. And then if there's no memory allocated, it's just going to say that there's failed memory allocation, which we don't really care too much about here. And it's just going to copy over the strings with a buffer and then spit out the command if it is valid, and everything else seems to be fine. So this looks to be a potential command injection vulnerability. Pretty standard considering there is no user sanitization within this web application. So we can head on over here and grab the private IP address, and we could see that there is a printer driver search. So we could just click on search and see if anything happens, and it looks like it does not. We could try something like HP just to see if anything shows up. And here we do see some of that file. So what we could do is we could just try to do some common command injection vulnerability attacks, and one being the semicolon, and then we could just put anything in here. So in this case, we'll just put something like ls. We can click on search, and we could see here that there is only the printer drivers.txt in this said directory. We could also try to do a tac A, and maybe we could also do, let's say, like a pwd just to see where we are within the file system. And here we see that root is running this specific file, as well as we are located in the user lib CGI bin directory. So there's really not much we could do within the CGI bin, but we could try to just quickly cat out the root.flag.txt. So we could go to cat/root/flag.txt and see what happens. And it doesn't look like anything really happens here. So we're not retrieving the flag, and it just shows us the entire file that we're trying to receive through that grep command that we saw before, which is the printer drivers.txt. So we need to find a way to privilege escalate over to root. And one of the most common techniques that you can do is running a find command. So we can do find/tac user, and we'll set it to root. We'll do a /perm, and we'll set it to 4000. This is going to check for SUID bits, where you can simply run stuff as the administrator. And then we'll do /dev/null, just to get rid of anything that we don't really have access to, so it's not cluttering our stuff. And we can see here that nothing is showing. So it looks like the way that I did it in the CTF no longer works, which is finding the SUID bit to obtain root access. So what we're going to have to do is start enumerating the entire directory structure of the Linux system on the back end. So again, we'll just do HP, and then we'll just start looking through everything. So we'll just start going back one and see what there is. So when we do a search, we could see here that there really isn't all too much going on from the looks of it. Again, we could try to just see what are common things within a Linux system. Something you could try is going over to Etsy and seeing if there's anything there. And it doesn't really look like anything is going on. There's nothing that looks too suspicious. So we'll come back over here, and maybe we'll try to go to opt and see if there's something new. Also, nothing is within the opt directory. But anyway, if you do the find command, you'll eventually end up in user local bin. And here we can see that there is a SUID bit for the root user, as well as an admin_help, which is not a normal and native binary on a Linux system, indicating that this is probably the way to go. So we could go over to the URL. And what we're going to do is let's just do a quick strings on this binary to see what it is. So we'll do strings on the user local bin, and then admin_help just to see what is going on. And here we could just take a look at something, and it looks like here there is a wish.sh file, and it looks like it's going to be executing at temp/wish.sh, and then it'll go on to execute that bash script file. So how do we complete this challenge? So in order to solve this challenge, we can write a simple one-liner. So what we're going to do is we'll get rid of everything here, and we'll start off by doing an echo into, let's say, cat and then root.flag.txt. And we're going to pipe this on over to /temp wish.sh. And then after that, we're going to wait for it to execute by going to, let's say, sudo user local bin. And then we'll do a admin help. And last but not least, we're also going to do a temp, or actually we're going to quickly read it out. So we'll do a cat /temp/ and then here we will do something like, well, actually we need to quickly set an output here. So we'll do a cat and then we'll set it to /temp and we'll set it to flag. And then we'll do a temp flag here. So that way we can retrieve the flag afterward. So after all this stuff is going on, we should be able to retrieve the flag, and let's see. So after it loads, we see that nothing happens. Let me try to put a comment at the end and see if that works. And it also doesn't look like it did. So what we could try now is we could just come over to, let's say, cat /temp, and we could actually just do an ls on this just to see what there is. And it looks like that did execute. Now there is no flag file here, indicating that it did not execute properly. So what we could try to do again is we could try to just go to user local bin, and then we can do admin help. And when we run it, let's see if anything works. Your wish is my command, maybe. So we could try again to see if something happened. So we'll just do an ls to /temp. And here we could see that there is the flag. So what we could do now is we could just cat out /temp /flag. And we have retrieved the flag for this challenge. So in this section, we're going to be taking a look at threat actor support line. You've heard of RAAS, you've heard of SAS. The threat actor support line brings the two together. Upload the file you want encrypted, and the service will start up its own hacker computer as the administrator user with antivirus disabled, of course, and encrypt them for you. So during this CTF specifically, for whatever reason, as soon as the challenge dropped, a bunch of malicious GitHubs started to show up on GitHub. Super awkward, super weird. I don't know if it was coincidental. I really have no idea. So let's get started by looking at the web application, see what we have to work with. So looking at the application, we could see it looks like just a standard thing, your friendly neighborhood ransomware support service. And we see here that we do have some frequently asked questions. So let's quickly take a look, and it says we only accept zip and RAR archive formats only. Please ensure your files are properly compressed. How does it work? When you upload your archive, we start up our own hacking computer, extract the files into a temporary directory, and encrypt them. And how long does it take? You can expect your encrypted files to be ready almost instantaneously. We use WinRAR 7.12 for handling archives. So because we see here WinRAR 7.12, we can kind of assume that maybe there's a CVE attached to it. When we take a look at some exploits pertaining to this, we could see if there are any. And it looks like there is one here, but I don't believe this is the correct one. As you can see, it was fixed in this specific issue. So it was fixed in 7.12 beta. So that is not the one that we're looking for. So we could look for specifically vulnerabilities maybe, and see if anything shows up here. Is there anything here that we can take a look at? And it looks like we are just sticking to the 6218, which is not the vulnerability that I am thinking of. We want to look for right here inside of a YouTube video. It says here CVE 2025 8088. So we could head on over to CVE 2025 8088, and then we can do GitHub, and we could see what exactly is going on. When this challenge did drop, it took us a while to figure this out, but John Hammond actually created a video regarding this specific vulnerability and used a very specific payload type, which it took me a while to find, but I ended up finding it. This is not what it is. This is just a detection GitHub, so we're not going to be using that. But we can come over to, let's see if this one's it. Let's see. Nope, this is also still the detection. We could try something like exploit script just to see if we can find it here. And it looks like this is the one that I'm talking about. So as long as you copy the code, pull it down through a zip file, and then extract it, we'll be able to then use it. Now, there are 3 parameters that we need to work with. The first is decoy. This is going to be a basic decoy. You can just put hello.txt with something random inside. It doesn't really matter. We need to create a payload, preferably a reverse shell in our case. And then we need to do tac drop to indicate which specific benign file we want to drop this payload into. So we can head back on over to our terminal and we could just see what this has. So again, we do have a script here called poc.py. When we run it, we can see what we have, and it needs to be Python. So here it looks like that it's just not working because I didn't set any specific parameters in place. And also I put in GIF instead of PY. And as you can see, we do need to create this decoy script, gather a payload, and then use the tac drop. So looking at our Linux virtual machine, which we'll spin up here, we can take a look at what exactly is going on. And what we're going to do is we're going to want to do an MSF Venom on a Windows computer, which is this exact thing. We're just going to do attack A just to make sure that we have the exact same IP address as before. But essentially what this is going to do is this is going to create us a reverse TCP through a Windows x64-bit using our local host, and we're going to be connecting back on port 443 in case there's other defense mechanisms in place. We'll be using the HTTPS port, and then we're going to simply export it as an executable. So we'll run this and we'll gather the revshell.exe, and it looks like it is done. We could just try to do a www, which is just going to create a web server on our Kali Linux box. We can head back on over to the Windows machine, and we could do a cert util tech URL cache, and then we'll do attack F, and then we'll do a http:// and we're going to need to get the IP address, which I believe is 192.168. Let me grab the private IP address quick. So it's 192.168.124.132. And we set it to port 8000 and we called it revshell.exe. We're going to do the output file as the exact same. And we can see URL cache is complete. And here we have the revshell.exe. So now that we have that, all we have to do is echo hello into hello.txt. So what we can do now is we can do Python poc.py to see what we need. So we need to do decoy, and then we'll set it to be the hello.txt. We'll also do the payload, which is going to be the rev shell. And then we're also going to do the drop. This is within the video of John Hammond. So let me quickly grab the specific directory that we need to work with. So it looks like we're going to be putting this file within the administrator's startup directory. So whenever the computer reboots, quote unquote, it's going to start up and execute our specific payload. So we can try to run this and see what happens. And we can see here that we do need to put single quotes around it. So let me quickly do that. And it still does not want to work. So let's try it one more time. And here we finally see that we do, and we will get the payload to be dropped at this specific location on this server. So what we could do is we could spin up a netcat listener on the Linux machine. So heading back on over to Linux, we could do nc and then lvmp, and then we'll do 443. Because that's the port that we'll be listening on. And now we can go about uploading that specific zip file onto the application. So going back over to the application, what we could do is we can click on upload archive, and we're going to head on over to our desktop, threat support, and then inside of here, we see here that we do have that RAR file. We can click upload and see if anything does happen. And it looks like the processing has failed and our computer has crashed. So try again later. And let's see if we've obtained a reverse shell. So it doesn't look like we've obtained a reverse shell on this machine. And this is kind of finicky the way that this works. So the way that I had to do it during the CTF, and this was one of my partners, Chris, ended up finding out, is you need to, for whatever reason, upload it through Linux, and then we should potentially receive a connection back. I have no idea why that works, but it does. So what we're going to do is we're simply going to copy it on over quick to our Kali Linux machine. So now that we have it on our Kali Linux machine, we could head on over to our website and we'll come to upload archive, and we will try to find that specific file. And then we're going to upload this RAR file. We'll wait for this to load and see if we do get a connection back. So let's see. And it looks like that did work. So now we do have a connection back. We can do a who am I to see who we are. And we are the NT authority system user. So we can come over to here and we'll just try to do a dir to see where the flag is located. Doesn't look like it's in here. So we could try to do something like c:/users administrator. We'll see if it's inside of the administrators, let's say desktop. It doesn't look like it's there. Let's see documents. Let's do a dir, and it also doesn't look like it's there. Let's try to go back to the C, and let's do just a dir, and we see here that there is a flag.txt in the root directory system of this Windows machine. So we can do type flag.txt, and we retrieve the flag. So in this challenge, we're going to be taking a look at XMDR from John Hammond, which is a miscellaneous challenge on the HuntressCTF 2025. And it says, we had a lot of fun helping the internet understand what MDRs are, but we thought of the next best thing. Why not have you use one? A host that you protect had some strange alerts fired off. Can you analyze and triage to find other malicious activity? And here we do see that we do have the instance running and the private IP address. Heading on over to the private IP address, we can take a look at what exactly is going on. The first thing first that we could see here is that there are two alerts. The first one being inside of the user administrator download section, there is a zip file that is severe. So I guess a severity set to severe, as well as this was detected by real-time protections. The next one is babyshark.zip, which is also a high severity finding. And we do see that there are a few processes here that we can run. So if we click on one, we could see what happens. So it looks like it is loading, and we'll wait for it to run and see what happens. This may take a second. And here we could see all the different kinds of processes that are running on the system. We can come over to user accounts and try to look and sift through all the different kinds of users on this specific machine and see what we have to work with. So looking at it, it looks like administrator is the only thing that is enabled. So the admin user. We could also take a look at maybe some of the defender information. This may lead us to somewhere because it does say real-time protection, which is part of the Windows Defender suite. So we'll just wait for that to load and see if anything shows up here. And it looks like everything is set to true as far as monitoring is concerned, in addition to real-time protections, as well as the antivirus signature version is also set to 1.439. But I don't really know if there's much going on with that. We also see here that there is tasking for directory and file, and we can specifically put a path. So because we are the administrator user, the first thing that we could try here is just going over to the users, administrator, and then we'll go over to the downloads directory to see if there are any specific downloads or malicious downloads on this user's downloads folder. So after running it, we could see that there are three things. The desktop.ini really doesn't mean too much, but we do see here that Chrome setup.exe is there, as well as the grts1 tar.gz, which is very similar to this .zip file that we saw here as being severe severity. So we'll just come over here and we'll click on it as a task. And we'll see what the task button does, which we can see it looks like we're able to download this specific file. So we get the SHA-256 hash, the MIME type, which is a tar file, as well as some additional data regarding this gzip file, as well as the zip file that will be presented to us is going to be the password infected. So we'll come over here and we will download it, and we'll head on over to our terminal, and we'll simply just move that over to our specific directory that we're looking at right now. So I don't really know what this is called. There we go. So now that we have the zip, we could do a 7-zip to extract it using the password of infected. And we can see that we have everything is okay. If we look inside, we could see that we need to also gunzip this. So grts, and then we can quickly do that and see what there is. And there's also a tar quick. So let's also quickly do that. jtrs tech1. And now we do have this directory. So we'll navigate over to it and see what we have inside of it. We'll just do a code dot, and this is going to spin up a VS Code process for us. And we can take a look at the server.py and see exactly what is going on. So it looks like this is going to be a web application. So inside the commands, it's going to write to a file using the start command and end command. And if we head on over to the client.go, we could see here that there's just more information regarding this specific file. Looks to be a C2 server, as we could see right here. So, all in all, this is a malicious file that was detected through Windows Defender, which does end up making sense. But we can see here again that there is that start command and end command that's being written to the file. So, knowing this information, we could start taking a look and navigating through the Windows directories to see what exactly we are looking for. Now, if you remember before, inside of our downloads, we did see that there was a Chrome setup.exe. And whenever you're dealing with Chrome, there's going to be a history file associated with Chrome. So the first thing that we're going to want to do is check the history file of Chrome to see what is inside. So what we could do is we can head on over to Google just to see where this history file is located. So history file location for, let's say, Google Chrome on Windows. And let's take a look and see if it does find out where exactly that is. So we're going to copy this on over and we'll paste it on into this specific directory. And we will see what there is. Again, we're going to change out that username to be the administrator because that is who we are. So when we click on task, let's let this run to spit out all of the files in this directory. And we can start navigating through all the different kind of files, but we're going to be looking for the history file, which should be here. And it looks like there is a history file. So we'll click on task and quickly download it onto our Kali machine once it is done processing. So I'll click on download and we'll head on back over to our terminal. And we'll quickly move over from downloads. I think it was called 6EE. We'll move it to there. And then we'll again just do the exact same thing, except instead of the D6A, we're going to name it as 6EE and extract this specific file. Now we did see inside of that C2 server that it was using a start command and end command. So what we can do is we could just do a quick strings on side of this history file just to see what is going on. And we'll set it to be start command and we'll click enter. If we scroll up a little bit, we can see that some of them are within a URL, so translate google.com. And then we also see here that there are actual just a bunch of different strings. So what we could do first is we could just copy all these different strings over to a specific file. So let's copy it. And again, we'll just go back to code with a period. And that'll again open up our VS Code process and we'll just make a new file. And we'll try to beautify this just a little bit because it is a little bit difficult to read. First things first is we're going to get rid of some of this URL encoding. So we're just going to do a control H. And instead of that, we're going to do a attack N for new line. And we're going to replace all. So we beautified it just a little bit to see what exactly is going on. And this looks to be just a bunch of nonsense. It doesn't really look like we can read anything, but there is a start command and an end command. So we'll copy over one of these just to see if maybe an online decipher or a cipher identifier can find out what exactly this is. So head on over to a new tab and we'll type in a decode FR cipher identifier and we'll just paste this on into our specific application and then click analyze. And we'll wait for it to analyze, and we could see that it is almost 100% certain that it's going to be a UU encode. But we can head on over to our terminal and just type in UU encode to see if there is maybe a package here that we can use. And it doesn't look like there is one. What if we tried to do something like uencode? Is there something in there? And it doesn't look like that is there either. So let's quickly look up how to go about getting UU encode onto Linux. So Linux UU encode and see how to go about installing it. And it looks like there is a binary for UU encode, just a matter of figuring out how we can go about installing it. So let's also look up the install instructions. So click on install and we can see here that we do need this package. So char utils. So let's copy this over and quickly install it. So now that it's done, we should have the UU encode binary here. Due to time restrictions and me not trying to go through everything that I did throughout the CTF, I built a quick solve script that'll do just this, and I'll explain everything inside of that solve script. So all this solve script is doing is it's doing the exact same command that we did. It's grabbing the output, and then from there, it's going to go and regex specific things out, like the begin 644 that we saw within here. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're just going to quickly make a directory. If it exists, it's fine, it'll move on. We're going to enumerate. So it's going to make all these different files called .uue as well as the .out. It'll write the begin 644 file as well as whatever is stripped onto this specific thing. So what it's basically grabbing is all of this right here. And then it's going to quickly set an end. It's going to do the UU decode, TAC O, as well as the output path. And then from there, it's simply going to check the output of the cat command throughout our path and retrieve the decoded data. So what we could do is we could try to run this and see if we do get the flag. So we'll do Python 3 solve.py. And we could see that we did get the flag. But that's all for this video. If you did enjoy, please let me know in the comment section down below, and please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.